Hello, my name is Vadmand Jensen. I'm a research assistant at the Human-Centered Computing Research Group at Aalborg University in Denmark. And on behalf of my co-authors, Kristina Laursen, Rikke Hagensby Jensen, and Rachel Charlotte Smith, I'll be presenting our paper, Imagining Sustainable Energy Communities. What will future sustainable energy systems look like? Well, there are many visions of this, but one vision, driven in part by the European Union, is that of energy communities. In these energy communities, we treat energy as a collective, common resource, one that everybody has a responsibility to both produce and consume for the benefit of the entire community. The idea here is that we can empower citizens to drive the energy transition in their local communities. And in doing so, they can also benefit from things like cheaper prices of energy or maybe more green job opportunities in the community. In HCI, computer science and related disciplines, we're increasingly seeing work focused on supporting this vision of energy communities using digital technologies. For example, we might use communal eco-feedback to communicate the status of energy production and consumption from different people in an energy community to motivate them. We might also use artificial intelligence to forecast energy consumption and production to understand how much energy we should produce and how. Or we might use blockchain technologies to essentially value different actions that we deem sustainable. And then we can use these blockchain currencies to reward people for this behavior. When we write this sort of research, we're essentially engaging in design narratives as conceptualized by Kristina. The idea here is that when we write these design narratives, we also define who receives attention and credit for the design work, but also what counts as a legitimate problem that we are working with, but also a solution that is legitimate for that problem. And in this sense, stories about energy communities that we write in research are design narratives. These design narratives relate to the sites where the design takes place, who gets to participate in design and how, but also the values that we choose to embed in design artifacts. And when it comes to energy communities, it seems that these design narratives would then contain ideas of sustainability, i.e., what counts as a sustainable energy community and what counts as a legitimate way to enact that sustainability. But the question then arises, are we talking about the radical understandings of sustainability, as Noel Zedal put it, that are necessary for sustainable transitions when it comes to this energy community research? We wanted to investigate this, and we started doing this using a scoping review. We conducted the scoping review in the ACM Digital Library because digitalized energy community research here is increasing, and we see that this is where many of these energy communities supported by digital technologies are imagined. So through a longer process that's detailed in our paper, we started out with 122 papers, ending up with 32 papers related to the socio-technical nature of energy communities. From these 32 papers, we extracted data items, or text snippets in our case, on sites of energy communities. So where is an energy community located and how is it distributed? Participation in energy communities, so who is expected to participate and how, but also future digital technologies. So what is the role of these technologies? What outcomes do we expect? And what's the role of designers in these energy communities? And all these text snippets were then subject to emergent coding. So we provided different text snippets, inductive codes that we then grouped together into design narratives, i.e. figuring out what we are talking about in this research. But furthermore, we wanted to understand how we assume specific things and what things we take for granted in these design narratives. And to do this, we conducted a critical discourse analysis of the text snippets in the design narratives. Here we use skeptical reading, trying to figure out what are the assumptions that underlie these text snippets. And I'd like to just highlight one example that shows what we did for all text snippets in a design narrative. So in this quote, the authors argue that we cannot expect that households spend an extended period of time trading on a local electricity market. So here we see, first of all, that the authors, well, they argue that as researchers, our job is to do what people want. We cannot expect these households to trade in an extended period of time, and as such, we should be trying to get them to do that. We should be supporting them in doing something different instead. Furthermore, there's a focus on households. So these are aggregates of people and practices, and that thus means that we do not look at the individuals or perhaps the larger institutions in an energy community. And finally, there's a focus on trading on a local electricity market. Here, the idea is obviously one similar to how we might trade financial services today. We might buy something, we might sell something. And this thus kind of upholds and keeps the idea that we want to work within the capitalist confines of electricity markets as they are today. Overall, what we find in this study is that the energy community visions described at ACM in this research are not reflective of radical visions of sustainable transformations of society, and that this might mean that we need to reimagine the way in which energy communities are researched. First of all, we see that the sites of energy communities are often framed as neighborly communities, so local communities where people already know each other are often what counts as an energy community. And these energy communities, well, they also prioritize self-sufficiency. We want to distribute profits or energy back to this energy community so that the local small-scale energy community can benefit from it. Furthermore, there are also some sites of energy communities that don't actually exist in the real physical world. They're simulated or they're virtual. And that's justifiable because they function as proof of concepts. So the idea is that energy communities can be difficult to implement in the real world and that we need to justify whether or not this concept is actually useful. And thus we simulate it in the first place. And finally, sites are also often tied to nations, which means that we often see sites specifically in the context of a specific nation, which is thus subject to the legislation, the regulatory context that exists here. For example, this might be in relation to how energy is distributed, or it might be in relation to laws about cooperatives in a specific nation. When it comes to participation, we often frame this as being close to energy production and consumption. So the people who participate in energy communities, well, they live close to wind turbines or solar cells, for example. And furthermore, there's a focus on the capability to produce and consume. So people are often framed as producers or consumers or prosumers, and are then, in a sense, looked at by virtue of what sorts of contributions they can make to the energy status of an energy community. There are also often described financial motivations for participation in energy communities. So we motivate people to engage in energy communities by promoting savings of different sorts, or for example, by promoting the idea that we can earn money for a local community through this energy community. And finally, it seems that participants are often framed as interested. So the people we include in studies and that we engage with in these papers are often people who have a stake in sustainability or who are interested in the green transition, for example. And furthermore, they're also often willing to take on professional tasks. So while they might not be energy professionals, they might go to meetings together with other energy stakeholders and actually take on that role. And thus they're already interested and they already want to be a part of the energy community. Finally, when it comes to future digital technologies, we see that they're often focused on enabling social relations. So in these communities, we want to get people together. They need to feel accountable and have a relation to each other. And we don't want to strain that relation. We don't want to be on bad terms with our neighbors in an energy community. Furthermore, this is often framed using financial trading mechanisms. So we trade energy or we share energy, and we do that with people and as part of upholding that social relation. Furthermore, future digital technologies focus on bringing empowerment to an energy community. They do this by minimizing the effort that people need to use. So we don't have to do so much with the technologies. They automate things and they take things away, so we don't have to think about distributing and producing energy in a responsible way. And furthermore, there's also a focus on limiting the changes required by people when it comes to this. So for example, not having to change out your entire household or all the technologies that you use. Finally, we see that there's a focus on using future digital technologies for incremental benefits. So we want to optimize or we want to minimize the things, trajectories, and regulations that we're already working within. We don't want to transform what we do, but rather we want to make sure that we're doing what we're currently doing in the best way possible. This leads us to consider the idea that perhaps we should be moving towards alternative design narratives of energy communities. We suggest 3 ways to do this. Firstly, we should be reshaping techno-solutionist visions. So we should be going together with engineers, policymakers, and planners of energy communities, people who are already working here, and we should be sharing diverging narratives of energy communities. All the narratives of people who are very different than described in this research, or technologies that are very, very different. We should be showcasing all this. We should be using that as a way to discuss how we might create new visions of energy communities. Furthermore, we should focus on scaffolding participation in energy communities. We see that there is often a focus on providing people with participation as defined by researchers. They should be motivated, for example, by financial gains. But instead, it might make sense to actually build the infrastructures of participation. So we should support people in defining themselves how they want to participate in an energy community and what they think that community should look like. Finally, we should be building alternative narratives. There are many, many different energy communities out there, and they are not all as they are described here. They might focus on things like social good way more. They might not be motivated by financial means. They might not even use sophisticated digital technologies. We should be understanding the pluralities of these energy communities, these communities that don't necessarily work within the paradigms of technological development and capitalist development, and try to figure out how they can coexist alongside these energy communities, and perhaps even be inspired by them. Thank you so much for listening to me. If you want to talk more about this paper, you can reach out to me at these socials. Thank you.